Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the School of Continuing Studies webinar. And today we're going to be talking aviation and talking about the various individuals who have made aviation part of their career. And we're going to let you have a chance to talk with these individuals and see how these individuals have managed themselves in their career over the last few years since they graduated. So we'll wait a couple of minutes and get everybody into the room and get this seminar and this webinar underway. So give us a few minutes and let everybody get themselves settled in. Hopefully we'll be able to fit everybody into the session. Give everybody another 10 seconds and we'll get ourselves going here. All right, so welcome everybody to our webinar on aviation. And we'll be looking at the world of aviation through the eyes of individuals that have gone through the School of Continuing Studies, School of Aviation Management, and have gone through the program of the Diploma, and who are ready to share with you some of the thoughts about what it takes to be successful in the world of aviation and what the prospects are for a successful career in aviation. So without further ado, I'm just going to ask the individuals to identify themselves on the session. We are going to be working with both chat as well as Q&A from the participants, from you. And if you have any questions or any comments about the presentations and about the different career paths that are being explained to you, please feel free to use a Q&A and or the chat. We'll be monitoring both facilities. And I'll be taking those questions and bringing them into the discussion. And you may direct the questions to one individual in the panel, one panelist, or you may address your questions to all the panelists and we'll have them contribute. So the schedule for the day is that we will start in a couple of minutes and then we'll basically finish off the session at 1 p.m. Eastern time today. So thank you very much for attending. And I'll let our female participant start off the session. Cecilia Chen, over to you, Cecilia.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cecilia Chen. I worked with Airline for 4 years. Prior to that, I have worked in fashion supply chain for over 10 years. Currently, I'm working as a network and a profit optimization manager in my role is plan and optimize flight schedule, aircraft upgauge, downgauge, flight capacity forecast, review, and assign a long-term customer allocation. My favorite part of my job is to do data analysis, cultivating data and business intelligence culture, and also accelerating change readiness and agility. Back to you, Joe.
Great, well, thanks, T. Well, I think, see, if you had to characterize how much of a person you've changed in terms of your, experiences over the last 4 years, and particularly the last 8 or 9 months, what are those things about yourself that you've learned, and how have you applied those in the context of your role at Air Canada?
For the last 4 years, I changed from fashion industry to aviation. I had a background in applied mathematics, from Beijing University of Astronomics. So it's kind of had a detour and back to my favorite industry at my heart. And in the last 8 to 9 months, I would say I have this opportunity to apply what I've learned in the aviation management to what I do at work. So that's a really interesting experience.
So do you find the environment that you're in now as challenging or less challenging than it was when you were pre-COVID-19?
Oh, wow. Definitely more challenging and more fun too. But yeah, I would say first, there's a lot of change you have to accelerate. So for example, our schedule, we look at, in the past, we look at schedule per season, 6 months long. But now with things evolve so fast, we have to shorten the review process much faster. Also, we have to have better time management with limited resource. For the work I do, I have to streamline and to prioritize, also multitasking. So yeah, so whatever happens, you have to deliver on time. So that's quite important.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, C. And I think that we'll have a lot of questions about the world of cargo and supply chain coming from our panelists. Next one on the introduction list, I'm going to ask Rodrigo to introduce himself and to give us a bit of background about his role in aviation.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Gradek. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you might be. My name is Rodrigo Lezama. I am currently working for Airbus in the marketing department for single aisle, for the single aisle family, which essentially is the A220 and the 320 family. I've been 13 years in the industry. Before joining Airbus, I had the opportunity to work with GE, with CAE, a Bombardier at the time, with both business and commercial aircraft. And I've been, I recently moved to Toulouse about 2 years ago to join Airbus. And basically what I do in my job is to, I would say, 3 things. I do product positioning of the single aisle family. I do competitive analysis to better, understand where do we are when it comes to our competitors in the marketplace, and I do support sales campaigns. So everything that has to do with selling planes, essentially, call it customer visits, call it demo tours, conferences. I've had the opportunity to work with Airbus in doing those promotion activities. And well, in these times, that activity has seen clearly a change in the way we do things, but we're still managing to, finding ways we have to keep the engagement with the customer and to keep on helping the airlines and the lessors to get the assets they need that better fit their business model.
So in terms of of your own personal growth at Airbus, do you find that the Airbus environment and the aviation manufacturing environment is something that has potential for growth in the future?
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, 2019 saw at the industry level the highest numbers in terms of aircraft deliveries, of passenger capacities, of route openings. Now, clearly, all that has taken a toll. It was inevitable with the current circumstances. But once we pass that, and we will pass this, everything. I mean, the outlook is to recover. And now, when it comes to the strategy of the aircraft manufacturers, is who's going to be better positioned to pick up again once the traffic comes back, because it will come back. That's a fact. But the way it's going to be handled and who's going to be ready when it comes to the operators having the right tools and the manufacturers having the right production capability to ramp up those activities, well, it calls definitely for a growth and for the need for that expertise to come into play and to find these new creative ways to make the most of the rebound that's gonna come.
So it's interesting to note in terms of the type of airplanes that are out there now. I think that I've seen some interesting stuff come out of Airbus's PR shop lately, particularly about hydrogen-powered airplanes. You just want to talk a bit about where what was the genesis of that and how's that being received by the marketplace?
Yeah, so I mean, the transitioning to clean energies has something that's been talked about in the industry for years now. I think the big change, if you saw the news recently with the launch of this project by Airbus, is uh, Airbus once again became the pioneer in setting the goalpost for the industry and saying, this is it. We've been talking about it. Nobody's really committed, let's say, to do it. And now Airbus has taken the lead into saying, well, this is it. We've set a goal in time. We've set a goal in the capabilities this aircraft or this new machine should have. And now we need to get there. And clearly with the support of the government, particularly here in Europe, the European governments, that's eventually it's going to become a reality. So the interesting thing is that now, when it comes to the marketplace, is well, okay, fair enough. 2030 is still, 10, 15 years away from now when this aircraft could possibly materialize. What do we do between now and then? And that's where the challenge also comes, because we still need to produce and to manufacture aircraft, which today are fuel efficient, and we need to keep engaging with airlines into doing all this transition, because airlines don't have to wait until the first hydrogen commercial airliner becomes live to start thinking and engaging more into these decarbonization strategies. So that's where aircraft manufacturers play a role into helping them today with the tools of today and transitioning into that eventual aspirational goal of the decarbonization of the industry.
So I can't order one of those airplanes today, can I?
I mean, for the time being, it's all a conceptual, but there's definitely a lot of work being done at Airbus that much I can tell you. And
I was gonna commit for about 50 aircraft on behalf of Air Canada.
that'll be great. And but honestly, though, I think the big change now is that now we've set the goalpost. Now there's a timeline in the mind of the industry, and what comes next is for the rest of the stakeholders to engage into this effort, I believe.
Well, I'll put an order for 10 freighters. Is that okay, see? 10 freighters. All right, thank you, Rodrigo. We'll come back and talk to you some more. Let's go back to the world of, let's see, who's up next? Wenbo. Talk about Air Canada and the world of revenue management. Over to you, sir.
Yes. Thank you, John. My name is Wenbo. I'm from China. So I graduated from McGill School of Continuing Studies in 2017. And since then, I have been working in revenue management at Air Canada. So revenue management is also known as yield management. It's quite common in the airline and hotel industry, where the inventory are limited and time sensitive. So basically, in the airline industry, what they do is the goal is mostly to maximize revenue in most cases by selling seats at different prices, even though they might be on the same plane. So to do so, airline does a lot of analysis, and they price each seat at a different point based on their understanding of consumer behavior. It's a very complex decision-making process. There are a lot of factors that are taken into account, including future outlook as well as historical data. But the principle of my work can be summarized as selling the right seat to the right customer for the right price at the right time. So that is what I have been doing since 2018.
Great. So when you talk about revenue management and the change in the mindset of revenue management since the pandemic, one of the things, of course, that's really key in revenue management is forecasting, right? And the probabilities and how do you assign it. So has that world changed as far as you're concerned in the middle of this pandemic?
Well, it has changed, I could say almost completely, because in a normal year, the airlines rely heavily on historical data to predict the future. Because believe it or not, history tends to repeat itself. So if there are a lot of people booking for this period in last year, there could be the same amount of people or even more amount of people booking at this point this year. So in the past, the airline relied heavily on historical data, but this year the pandemic as well as the travel restrictions imposed by the government have completely changed the behaviors that people book their tickets. What the airline industry has seen so far this year is that there's a very compressed booking window, what we call, is that which means how far away you book your ticket. Perhaps last year, people would be very willing to book their vacation 6 months away. But this year, people are not so sure about their plan. They're not sure if they can travel in 6 months. They're not sure if the border will be closed. So a lot of people would rather wait until the very last minute to book their ticket. Now, because of that, the historical data becomes less relevant this year. So the airlines are struggling to find a way to forecast the future demand as close as to the reality. And that's a lot of and we have put in a lot of work manually and with the assistance of AI and other programs to help us understand the booking behavior during the pandemic.
So the discrimination process of putting different pricing on airplanes and pricing seats differently still is maintained. You're not really, looking at reducing the variety and the number of different types of fares on airplanes as a result of this.
It's starting to show that different airlines are starting to have different approach depending on the goal. In a normal year, the goal is usually to maximize revenue. However, this year, there could be many other reasons. Airlines are struggling to fill up seats. We are in a different scenario than last year because we could say last year there were a lot of cases that there were more demand than the seat supply. However, this year, there are definitely a lot more seats than demand out there. So airlines are trying very different things this year instead of following the traditional model. However, we could say that the principle of revenue management is still to price discriminate to maximize the revenue.
Good, great, thank you a lot. We'll get back to that one for sure, Wenbo. Thank you. Mo, what's going on in Airbus Mirabel these days?
We're lucky to be still very busy, John.
Good. So tell me about yourself and what you've been doing.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Mo. It's nice to be here. Thank you, John, for the invite. I'm originally from Egypt, from the lovely city of Alexandria. I came here to Toronto to study aerospace engineering. I graduated 2012 from Ryerson University. I'm also obviously an alumni of the McGill Aviation program, class of 2018. So I came to Montreal and I never went back. Anyway, in terms of work experience, I've been working in the aircraft manufacturing business for over almost 8 years now. So I was lucky to have a bit of a diverse experience, starting out with Bombardier as a methods engineer, supporting final assembly line and flight test operations for the Bombardier Global 56000 business aircraft. Later, about 2.5 years later, I got to move to commercial aircraft as an airworthiness engineer on the Q400, the turboprops. So quite a different role, doing mostly safety management for the fleet and foreign validations to make sure that our aircraft are compliant with the national requirements of any of our importing customers. Later on, about 3 years later, you guys know the Airbus took over the A220 program, and I got to join the A220 customer services as a maintenance planning analyst. So my main role was to support the new customers in developing a customized maintenance program, which is unique to their own fleet and operational environment and regulatory requirements. So as you can see, I've worked in engineering and design to production to customer services, the entire life cycle of the aircraft. And my role today as an entry into service project manager is to bring together all these elements, connect all these dots to ensure a successful entry into service for our customers. So I take over from my friend Rodrigo from the second they signed the purchase agreement, all the way onto managing all the activities until their first delivery and the entry into revenue service. So we look after everything they need, whether it's training, spare parts, tools, approvals, technical publications, even the little safety card that you find in this pocket in front of you, everything really. So that's it.
Must have been fun it must have been fun working with Egypt Air and getting their A220.
Yes, it was a lot of fun actually. It was really nice to be able to do something for my country, for my homeland, right? So it was quite special, the Egypt Air crew, they almost treat me like family. It's incredible. I even got to go to Cairo and spend time there with them. So that was was quite a unique experience indeed. It was the first time I was working primarily in Arabic.
We need more of those. So if you look at trying to give some advice to individuals who are thinking of going into the technical side of aviation, the prospects associated with either supporting manufacture or whether it's in the maintenance and repair world, what do you see as part of that evolution? Is there still a home for more individuals to work in the technical side of the aviation world?
Yeah, I mean, of course, John, we are going through a difficult time right now, without question. But like my friends Wembo and Rodrigo mentioned, we will recover and we will get past this. And we will see pickup again in aviation. I mean, aviation is what connects the world, and there's really no alternative to flying. And actually, you mentioned maintenance activities, for example. A lot of the maintenance work that's being delayed and postponed today to cut cost is going to come due later on once you start flying those aircraft again. So we predict to see like a spike in maintenance activities that are being postponed right now. So no, there's always going to be opportunities in the technical world, and we're always building exciting new aircraft, and so for sure there is.
Great. Well, thank you, Mo. I think we're going to have lots of questions from individuals in the room about the technical as well as the commercial side of aircraft manufacture. And
thank you.
Last but not least, Pascal Boissé. And Pascal is also a recent graduate and is going to talk to us about an interesting environment called RPAS. And for those of you that know RPAS, great. For those of you that don't know what RPAS is, Pascal is your expert. Over to you, sir.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Pascal Boissé. I've been involved in the drone business. So what the technical name would be RPAS now, as ICAO stated it. So which stands for Remotely Piloted Aircraft System. So drones for the rest of us. Yes, I've been in that business for a while. I am an industrial designer by trade. I've been in industrial design for more than 25 years now. And I also teach design, specifically transportation design at UQAM, but industrial design in general at Dawson College here in Montreal. And on the side, I've always been very passionate about aviation and the promise that someday we'll get a flying car. So that kind of interested me in the drone business when it started up like more than 10 years ago, because I saw there the technology that would lead to someday to other types of passenger aircraft for local or urban service. And this is exactly what we see now happening. There's a lot of hurdles and obstacles on the way because the regulatory aspect of all this is not up to speed with what the industry is doing. The industry is developing much faster than the regulator and the aviation authorities are able to, to figure out or foresee what the future will be. they have to stand there and wait for us, the industry, to dictate them, like we need this kind of regulation or this or that. So it's a very interesting time to be in aviation, I guess, because we will see. We talked just earlier about decarbonization and stuff. I mean, aircraft like traditional tube with wings aircraft will change because of new fuels, but in the meantime, also autonomous aircraft will go to the sky. But again, how do you fly autonomous aircraft all over the place, all over a city, with traditional air control that you have, like a human being has to talk with another human being? That's a very interesting problematic. And again, people are working on that aspect. So how you would coordinate all these autonomous aircraft developing in the sky with an autonomous air management system, airspace management system. So I have been involved with a startup for a year and a half now that's called Aironics. And Aironics is a air cargo by drone company targeted on the industrial needs. So we don't want to be delivering parcels to people like that order stuff on Amazon. This is not our business, but we're looking at developing a network of industrial links between industrial parks around cities with drones, mainly drones and other last mile delivery solutions that would be combined with that. So that's what I've been involved in the last year and a half, aside from my teaching duties and stuff. Yes.
Kind of a busy guy. But then, just talk about, drones for a second. And, I like the term drones rather than RPAS. I don't care what ICAO says. I like a drone. And so we talk about the way in which, drones are evolving. And I think one of the key elements of drones was always electric propulsion rather than hydrocarbons on drones. And just to get your thoughts about, everybody's talking about decarbonization and looking at ways to, in fact, become sustainable in terms of air transport. So, just a question, in terms of where do you see, hydrocarbons in drones versus electrics in drones? Is that something that has yet to be defined, or is it something that's evolving quickly?
It will all depend on the payload, because right now what you have is for, let's say, what we call medium haul distances that are not yet legal, but in the range of 15 to 20 kilometers. We're looking at like 1/3 of the takeoff weight of the aircraft would be batteries. So that can be a problem. Hydrocarbons fuels could be a solution for, let's say, longer distances simply because of the power density of that fuel compared to batteries and electric power. I've seen the Airbus projects, and I'm not a strong believer in hydrogen and fuel cells for at least for drones. For what I've seen, the experiments we've done, and I mean, it has to be proven. But for the time being, working with electricity in batteries are very, very heavy and not power dense. So it's a drawback that we have to live with if we are to use only electricity. So but for what we're looking at right now, medium distances, urban deliveries, it could work. It could work. But it penalizes your payload. But there's some advantages in terms of noise and all that. Whereas drones that work on fuel make amazing quantities of noise. They're like flying chainsaws. So that would not be, let's say, socially acceptable in town or near cities. So yeah, I think electricity has good potential, but not for longer distances.
Yeah, I like your analogy. Flying chainsaws. Nice. So we have to make sure that we keep our heads down and eyes looking skyward. When you hear a chainsaw going, it might be a drone. All right. Well, thank you very much, Pascal. Much appreciated. All right. So we now open it up to questions from the floor, and we've got a few coming up through the Q&A as well as through the chat. So let's see if we can somehow, some way address some of these questions in no specific order, but the question was being asked about Wenbo, about Air Canada's behavior on seat sales and looking at things like the add-ons that you might get in terms of carbon offsetting and the use of sustainable aviation fuels. Have you seen, in terms of a lot more requests or a lot more attention being paid to the way in which Air Canada is packaging its pricing or its product distribution that deal with, people concerned about carbon offsets and sustainable aviation fuels?
Well, in terms of that, in North America, I haven't seen a lot of development when it comes to carbon reduction. I have more faith in, I personally believe we might be looking at the European carriers to start off this project. But I do believe there have been experiments on clean fuel, clean energy in the airline industry, and that is a long-term goal.
Good. All right. Question for Rodrigo. Question about, the amount of delay that takes between the time you order an airplane and the time you deliver an airplane. When you look at the impact of the pandemic, has that shortened the gap at all? Is it easier for us to get a delivery in 2021 or 2022, or do we still have to wait X number of years before we get a unit off the line?
So as a general rule, and you probably saw that in the news, like when it comes to Airbus, as a general production rate for all the products, it's been reduced by about a third, which essentially translates, or rather is a consequence of airlines most likely deciding to defer some of their deliveries, or in some cases, some inevitable cases where bankruptcies or Chapter 11 filings have been made, where airlines are just not able to take deliveries anymore. All this to say that, well, yes, I mean, we still have a pretty solid backlog, and the fact that the production has been slowed down effectively means that, we're still delivering at the appropriate rate for the airlines that are still taking delivery. And just recently, for example, we announced a new operator in Greece, which will be most likely getting their aircraft sooner than expected, if you wish, simply because all the contractual renegotiations between not just operators but also lessors could definitely accommodate earlier deliveries if in some cases. It's very dependent also on the types. You have to, it's not the same taking delivery of a 320neo than say a 350. Just having production rates much, very, very different. So yeah, I wouldn't say it has shortened the times. I would say it has opened opportunities for contractual negotiations. And yes, definitely. So if there are operators that are, let's say, in the financial position to renegotiate or to sign a contract for a short-term delivery, it is definitely easier to do that now than in the past.
And I think right now, if I wanted to buy a 320 Neo or a 320 XLR, a 321 XLR, I think I'd have to wait somewhere about 3 or 4 years, but because that airplane is still in demand and there's a lot of backlog. But if I wanted to buy an A380, delivery tomorrow, right?
Well,
only kidding, Rodrigo.
Yeah, no, but you're right. In the case of the XLR, for example, you're right. I mean, EIS is expected around 23, 24, and that that's definitely not a one you could get tomorrow, unfortunately.
Right. Okay. So next question I have here was more about for C, in terms of switching from network planning for passengers to cargo network planning. How much of a mindset change was required on your part to do that?
Actually, I always worked in cargo department. Sorry, I wasn't clear before. So I was doing allocation in cargo, and then now I switched to network planning. And but I just want to mention in this COVID period, it's an opportunity we have to work more closely with passenger side. Before we do work together, but more on a high level. Now, because of belly aircraft carried less passengers, so it's more opportunity for cargo. That's why we worked more closely. So yeah, we have daily, weekly meetings to study the behavior of cargo revenue and also the passenger side. So for example, for some of the repatriation flight, so people carry more bags. So those bags eat some capacity of cargo. So what's the capacity left for cargo? What's the estimate? And what's a break-even point? So yeah, it was.
I see, we saw a number of Air Canada passenger aircraft get reconfigured to freighter operations back at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yes.
Is that a permanent conversion of those aircraft, or do we see those aircraft come back to passenger? And what's the number of, how many of those airplanes have really been, repurposed as freighters permanently?
It's a very interesting experience. We are very proud of it. So yeah, we're not the only airline, but we are the one of the first to act on it. We have changed both 77W and 333, the main deck to a main deck load. So there's a lot of work involved, not only operation procedure, also for scheduling. It's 33C and 77C is not exactly IATA standard code. So different system not talking to each other, how we to manage this barrier to have this proper capacity feed, proper AI forecast and proper BI reporting. So all this, it's quite a challenge, but the result is really rewarding. We just passed 3,000 freighter flight. So
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Not
very
bad.
Yeah.
Impressive. Great. Wenbo, a couple of questions for you in terms of business travel and, the impact of the pandemic on business travel, and to see, has there been, we all heard about the downturn in business travel. So I will assume for a moment that it is real. The question is going to be one of saying, so how long is it going to be before we get business travel back, and if it's ever going to come back? Over to you.
So yes, that we have. It is obvious that the business are not sending their employees for meeting and stuff. In the short term, it has dropped dramatically. According to the IATA forecast, I believe they're looking at the 2024-2025 recovery of travel at a combined level. However, like personally, I believe that this pandemic will structurally change how the component of passengers for the airlines in the future. So the visiting friends and family and relatives, this is one category that we look at in the airline industry, and those ones were likely to come back earlier than business travel, as well as people going on vacation. So in the long term, I think the airlines will need to look at how to re-optimize their network in order to adapt to the change of the passenger component. So recently, I have seen news from the US that some legacy carriers, for example, American and Delta, they have already started flying routes that they used to serve over their hubs. However, now because they're not getting enough business passengers, so they have to capture every single leisure traffic that is over there. So instead of routing everyone over their hubs, they started launching those point-to-point flights from a secondary city to another secondary city. So this is already the early signs of the pandemic on the impact of pandemic on the airline industry. And I believe as the business traffic will not be back in the short term, airlines will need to change a lot in terms of their fare strategy as well as network planning.
Good. there was a couple of questions here I thought I'd answer because I kind of have an opinion. One of the question was, would the Air Canada purchase of Air Transat mean the end of Air Canada Rouge? And I'm not going to put Wenbo and C on the spot on that one. I'll just take my shot at it. The whole intent of Air Canada buying Transat is really to basically get additional fleet. Some very, very good airplanes, some very, very progressive airplanes. The Airbus fleet that Air Transat has is going to be a shot in the arm in terms of reducing the operating costs and increasing the range of the Air Canada fleet. So would that change Rouge? It will probably, the one thing it will do, it will expand, the amount of flying that Air Canada will be doing into new destinations. So you'll get a lot more new destinations showing up on the Air Canada map with the acquisition of the Air Transat airplane. So it is going to be growing. I don't think you'll see Air Canada Rouge disappearing. You'll see, potentially, would both brands stay? Would both the Air Transat and the Air Canada Rouge brand stay? Good question. That's going to be Air Canada's call. I think initially both brands will stay. You'll have Air Transat flying, you'll have Air Canada Rouge flying. In the longer term, does it make sense to have both flying? Probably not, but that's my opinion. Yeah, and so that we'll see probably a redefinition somehow of those two carriers or two brands somehow merging into one, whether it'll be Rouge or whether it'll be Transat, who knows? So that is something that we'll have to wait and see how Air Canada decides to integrate the Air Transat transaction. And that still may not happen because of the fact that you've got regulators looking at competition, and they may express an opinion about whether that's a transaction that the competitor that will in fact stifle competition. So that might be something that we have to deal with. A couple of things here, and I think that I'm going to ask Moe and probably Rodrigo to answer about where is it that we talk about the 737 coming back, and I know it's not your airplane, thank God. But talking from an engineering point of view and looking at the work that's been done to bring that airplane back, is there something that's changed in the way that we design airplanes or the way we launch airplanes that the world of aviation has learned from what's happened with the 737 MAX? Rodrigo, what do you think?
Well, I don't think it has changed fundamentally the most, the paramount of the whole industry, which is safety, right? Obviously what happened, it was a tragedy and the whole industry was shocked by it. Now what we see, just being very honest and very respectful to Boeing, is just that it's been when it comes to the grounding, it has put the spot, I think, on the importance of independent regulators, right? I think it put the spotlight on regulators and how the entire process was being done. Fundamentally, nothing has changed because that's the way aircraft have been certified for years, but now it's put a lot more responsibility, I believe, and rightly so, into the regulators to look at different angles, all with the combined effort to increase safety ultimately. And now something what's going to be interesting now, and definitely Moe can tell us more about it, it's what's it going to take to bring those aircraft back in service, because I mean, it's according to the news that may start happening very soon, but some of these aircraft have been grounded for about 18 months or so. And bringing back an aircraft that's been stored 18 months, it's not just like it's not just like you take off the cover and you put it into service, right, Moe?
Moe,
you really want to get me started on Boeing?
That'll be for another webinar with Boeing on panel.
Okay. No. Jokes aside, as a safety professional, this is something that I follow with great interest, John. And, a lot of people ask me this question specifically because it's Boeing and Airbus. And the truth is, safety is not really a point of competition. We believe that every aircraft that's flying in the air has to be, safe, totally safe for the passengers, right? And the truth is, the vast majority of the passengers cannot tell the difference between a Boeing or an Airbus. So if people lose confidence in flying, everyone hurts in the end, right? So it's in our best interest as well to maintain the safety and the trust in aviation, right? So when it comes to the 737 MAX, I'm really not worried or concerned too much from a technical point of view. On the changes that are being implemented in terms of the software modification or the additional training, because it's being looked at very, very carefully and under a lot of scrutiny by the regulators. What interests me more, John, and we learned in school that there's three kinds of hazards, right? A technical hazard, like a system failure, a human hazard, like a pilot error, or an organizational hazard, where the way that you do your day-to-day business can create a safety hazard, right? And I think if we look at the Boeing case, it's almost like a textbook example, where they knew about this issue from before. They hid it from the regulators. They did not advise the pilots. Even after the first crash, there was very little that was done, right, in terms of corrective action. So this is what interests me, is how are they going to change the way they do their business, right? And Boeing is such a great company. Everyone knows their contribution to the aviation world, whether it's the queen of the skies, the 747 or the 787. So it's a really great company. Unfortunately, they have lost their way a little bit, and I genuinely hope that they will find their way back into the field.
Okay, good answer. Even Boeing would be very happy with that answer. Good job, Bo. Couple of questions here. I think, Pascal, you mentioned you're not a fan of hydrogen on drones, and what's caused you to have that level of concern about alternative fuels on drones?
Well, the problem I see with hydrogen, the state of the art we have now, either you bring hydrogen on board a drone to power a combustion engine, which makes that engine more complex, as if you would work it with normal fuel or alcohol. And if you plan to use fuel cells are currently pretty heavy, and they cannot have like a burst output of power. And that's what we have on drones. I mean, you have a gust of wind that shifts the drone. You have to apply a lot of power to straighten the machine. So whenever you use a fuel cell, you have to carry on board this big tank, and also a battery to give the power up, the power bursts. So that's a problem. So that's why, and hydrogen itself, it needs to be stored. You have two ways to store hydrogen. Either you compress it in a tank that is very big and has to be pretty solid. So it's even if it's made of carbon fiber, it could be very heavy. And also you can liquidify your hydrogen, in which case it goes to minus 255 or 54 degrees. So the hydrogen remains as a liquid. So this is very difficult to manage in a vehicle, and in the flying, anything that flies. I mean, to have a cryogenic system on board. So okay. For now, I think it's pretty difficult. But there's some real interesting advantages, because you can. On a drone, I mean, instead of swapping batteries, swapping a tank could be much faster, or recharging an electric drone. Hydrogen, you could just plug something, pump some more hydrogen in there, and have it fly back in terms of seconds or minutes. Whereas charging a drone would take hours if you don't swap the batteries. So, I mean, in terms of flight procedures on a large fleet, it could have some good points, but the technology will have to grow and evolve from what it is today. It's not really mature for commercial applications.
So here's a trick question, and I'm going to go around to all the panelists. Question was, some of you are all recent grads in the last few years. how would you navigate a job search within the industry today? Is there anything you would do differently now than what you did before? So Rodrigo, since you're the most senior alumni, any comment on that question?
Yeah, so I think the way, particularly my job, and I'll speak about my experience, it's about how things have changed. Well, it's believe it or not, and this might be counterintuitive, but being in a marketing position where you know, you might think about a lot of creativity and creating things. It could certainly, marketing is also about repeat, 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 right? So for years, some of the messages, some of the way marketing at the aircraft level has been done hasn't changed much. Obviously, that's been completely disrupted by this. And what I can tell you is like the new ways of navigating, it's really coming with it's embracing the digital, the distance marketing, if you wish, because that's what we're doing. And I think after the recovery even, and once we're able to travel freely as we used to, there will still very a valuable component in getting to better grasp with different ways of marketing, of selling aircraft, of engaging. I think the key word is how can you manage to keep engaged a customer that, you know, in a different time zone, thousands of nautical miles away, you would still need that human touch. But the fact of you know, being able to creatively find ways and means to engage with a community, to reach a public, to transmit your messages, that is invaluable, and that's something the aviation industry is still gonna is gonna be looking for. If anything, for the simple reason of, you know, the cost effectiveness. When trying to cost cuts, when trying to, you know, keep your core activities going while still being able to reach out your community, well, this is a good way. And it might be something simple and easy to say, but trust me, it hasn't been easy for an industry like, you know, in other industries, it's something common, right? It's something that's embedded in the activity itself. But aviation, it's a different, it has different inertia from the production, from the cycles of the business. Traditionally, it's a, how do I say it? It's, I wouldn't, it's an old school industry, but that's changing, and that, you know, the industry is being forced to change dramatically, to adapt and to react to this change. And that's where I would, you know, start to probably navigate these other activities, you know, like a digital information when it comes to components, to maintenance, to traffic diagnostics, a lot of these things. And when it comes to the marketing, these new means of communication and channels with customers.
Great. See, any comment?
Yeah, I just want to echo with what Rodrigo said. It's a lot of opportunity. We will definitely see some shifting for sure, but we'll see innovative ways of from business level. For example, it could be we have more drones, more unmanned aircraft, even some subscription kind of business model, or a lot of new innovation on the horizon. And the digital front will see a more digital transformation and more collaboration with e-commerce, let's say e-commerce integrated last mile, first mile into aviation. So definitely a lot of exciting things on the horizon.
Wenbo, what do you think?
Yes, I always have faith in aviation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten into this industry. In the long run, I believe aviation is going to come back strong as before, even more. Right now, we're experiencing very difficult times, and it's times of change. But it's usually during time of change that opportunities come. We have seen in the last few months, we have seen so many attempts that was not considered before during a normal year. So my advice is really to be flexible and keep your eyes open.
Okay, great, thank you. Mo, comments?
I mean, after all this great advice from everyone, I really don't know what much we can add. But if there's one thing, like Wembo said, I also believe that the industry will come back and will come back strong. But maybe just the period that we are right now is quite difficult and challenging to the airlines and the manufacturers and everyone. So there may not be as many opportunities out there right now as we would like. So I would use this time right now, this opportunity to upgrade my skills and gain knowledge and experience in these areas where we see growth and development in the future, right? So if this is something that interests you, maybe I'll do something related to drones or cargo or like if I was going to get like a maintenance license, for example, I'll get it for one of the new aircraft types like Air 350 or 787, where there is going to be growth in the future.
Okay, Pascal? Any opportunities in the drone business?
I think it's a very, again, an interesting time because a lot of things we were planning or saying about the drone industry a year ago before COVID, we were seen as, happy fools that were dreaming of a crazy future. People knew, I mean, technically it was feasible, but the industry would resist a lot. COVID brought a lot of stress on the supply chain, a lot of stress on cargo delivery. And suddenly what we're promoting is seen as something not only feasible, but something that would be great to invest in. And we have a lot more positive perception of our project now. So, I mean, again, I will say the same thing again. The regulator is not up to speed in general with what where the industry is going and what we're doing. But I mean, there's a lot of push now. We see a lot of steam building up for this industry.
Great. Well, I think we're getting close to the end of our session. And I just one last question. I think that I kind of stuck in the back of my mind when I read it, and I've got about 30 questions here we haven't been able to address, and we'll probably need the rest of the afternoon to kind of answer all these questions. But there's one, of course, it's got some importance in terms of why I'm here and what the School in Continuing Studies is all about. And if I had to wrap it up, what would you say that your undergrad or prior education at McGill's continuing studies is very prominent or relevant to your position today? Did you learn anything at McGill that you basically have been able to apply that would have been difficult for you to apply without the continuing studies diploma? Rodrigo?
I mean, absolutely. To me, the link when doing the aviation management, I had done a master's in aerospace and I was working in engineering, and what the diploma gave me was this spark to know that there is another side, which was the commercial business, the management business, the marketing business, and it gave me two things: the spark, so to the initiation to understand that what, this is what I need. This is the change I'm looking while staying in the industry. And number two, the networking. Ultimately, I ended up where I ended up through colleagues from the course who, were interacting, were able to refer me to somebody else and say like, hey, actually, I saw you presenting and, I think you could be a good fit in somebody's team and I'm going to introduce you to that person. So, that being said, it's I think it's pretty clear what this particularly education gave me in changing and switching paths in my career.
See, any comments?
For me, the most stands out is first, I after the aviation management, I started to look at things more holistically, because we have the whole series of different, from airport, airlines, cargo, all different components. So I started to look at aviation community as a whole. The second thing I would like to mention is it's all the invaluable knowledge we have from this education we can apply into our actual work. So for example, leading change is one of my favorite course. And so like Porter's eight steps model to me is not theoretically model anymore. I could actually apply to work. So that's very valuable.
Good, thank you. Wenbo, parting comments?
Yes, well, the biggest benefit from this program is definitely that it gives me an idea of what an overview of the whole industry. So when it comes to my area of work, I do have training, I do have specific things to learn, but because I have the background knowledge of what is happening in other areas in this industry, so I always have a better understanding of what is going on in my work. And when I look at strategies from airlines, I can look at them in a big picture instead of just focusing on my specialization. And also, like Rodrigo mentioned, the networking component it's a great benefit that is provided by this program, and I really appreciate that.
Great, thank you. Mo, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with my friends, John. I mean, it was great to be able to complement the technical aspect with having an understanding of the management and business and commercial aspect from the diploma. And today in my work, I think I actually deal more with commercial and contractual stuff than with technical. So it was definitely a big bonus, and obviously the networking as well. All the awesome people and friends that I made. That was probably the biggest win from the program.
And the last word goes to you, Pascal.
Yes. Since I had already a career going on, and this was more like for personal culture than anything else. When I got into that program, I wanted to know more about aviation, but I would say that it gave me a lot more than I was expecting. And it gave me like an understanding of the global structure of the industry. It gave me the vocabulary of the industry, how things are going, who are the stakeholders in this industry, who takes the decisions, the whole workflow of the industry as a global understanding. And that's amazing because the way the program is structured, you get to see all these different facets of, and at the same time, you put the puzzle together, and it's great. I mean, it gave me the impulse to not only want to know more about aviation, but to be really involved in that industry. Even though I had, like I say, already a career going on, I wanted another career in parallel in the aviation world. It's really motivating, I think. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Well, we've exceeded our time by a few minutes. Thank you very much for your participation, panelists. Very much appreciated. And thank you, everybody, for taking a time out of your schedules to participate. This has been recorded, so the recording will be available to everybody who's registered for the session. And I think we're going to do this again sometime. And thank you very much for the panelists. And yeah, Mo, next time I think I'll invite a Boeing guy, just to make sure we have some balance.
I was just going to ask if you were going to share this recording with Boeing, but anyway.
Guess what? There might be some Boeing people on the participants. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Have a great afternoon and evening, day, wherever you happen to be, and we'll be back. Have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.